Also, we hear that more and more juniors choose college as a stepping stone for further tennis careers. This is a good thing. However, this limits the opportunities of our juniors. So tonight we have a college coach from North Carolina State here with us. We also have Ben, who represents the college program for the UTR. And we hope our juniors will ask them questions after this session or after they've talked a little bit. So Mike, do you wish to take over and tell us a little bit about the agenda?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, thanks so much. First of all, I'd just like to thank the Norwegian Tennis Federation, Tina especially, and Svein, who we work with on a consistent basis for all their support. And we work with federations around the world at Universal Tennis. Really, as many of you know on here, we set the gold standard really for college recruiting and working with colleges in the United States with our partnership with the Intercollegiate Tennis Association. And then obviously many of you on this call that are junior players looking to play tennis in the United States. So one of our goals is to really help provide more opportunities, as our company's mission statement is to make tennis accessible, affordable, and also fun as well at the same time. So yeah, today we have a great opportunity for all of you to interact with a top collegiate coach, and also have our college program manager, Ben Van Hout, who's really the expert in what he does. And actually Ben is I checked the registrants, he's a 10.91, so he's tied with Henrik, if Henrik's on the call, as the top UTRs on this call. So what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Ben, and then we'll get going. Ben, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tina, for having us. And I actually have family that live in Norway, and I've traveled there many times, and I absolutely love Oslo. So this is special to me. I just want to kind of give a brief background on what I do for UTR. I'm our college representative. So basically I help college coaches, drive revenue for their programs, help them use our recruiting tools, and then also kind of engage their communities. And so I got involved with UTR by running these college team tennis events in a couple different states, and those went fantastic. Now, kind of enough about me. I do want to welcome our spotlight legendary guest, Dave Secker. He has won 7 national titles at the Division II level, and a 3-time Assistant Coach of the Year award. These are super awesome accomplishments. And then he also has the most total wins, right, Dave, at NC State. They have the record. Basically, me and Dave were talking earlier, and I asked him what his best accomplishments were, and he said, I've basically gotten all the records at NC State. So only way is up now. And then Dave, do you want to go ahead and give us a little bit of background on kind of what got you into college coaching? And then you were also heavily recruited junior player out of England. So you've kind of had that international recruit background as well.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having us. I hope having a good evening and everybody's doing well in Norway. Thank you for doing this in English. My Norwegian is not that strong. Basically, I'm 39 years old, so 20 or 22, 23 years ago, I sat in the chair you guys are sitting. I was a junior tennis player out of England. I played college tennis in the US. I played at a Division II school. I was not eligible to play in what you would call Division I. I played in Division II. I did graduate school and was an assistant coach at the school I played for. I then worked in club and some professional tennis in the US, and I'm now at a Division I school, one of the largest schools in the US, coaching at a very high level program in Division I.
That's great. That's great. I do have kind of a few questions we're going to run through, everyone. And if we, need to stop and ask questions, Tina's let us know to clarify anything. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. The first question to you, Dave, is what are kind of your main responsibilities and your goals as a coach at the collegiate level?
So we, at the end of the day, at the level we are at, we are in probably what you would describe as the Power Five, the biggest schools athletically in America. It is really run like professional sports. We have contracts, we have very large budgets that we're operating with, close in excess of $1 million as a women's tennis team for 8 players, recruiting budgets, facility budgets. So really, our expectation is to put the best product possible on the courts every year. We have goals and levels we're expected to make, but realistically, my primary job is to get the players in the most successful positions they can be in. Obviously, we do have a lot of responsibilities. There are a lot of rules we have to follow in America. So we have to make sure we're always within those. A large percentage of our job, actually not recently with COVID, but it's about to start again, is recruiting. It's probably 25-30% of our job is the recruiting side of things. So as much time as we're spending with the players, there are certain times of the year where we actually spend more time recruiting than we actually do training, depending on what kind of things. But it's multi-layered, but it's certainly not just being a tennis coach. It's not, I worked in club tennis, junior tennis, professional tennis, where it's just, how do I make this player better? As a college coach, you do wear some different hats for sure.
That's great. That's great. And then what are kind of what's your recruiting process in terms of, when you sit down and you spend that time figuring out who you're looking at, how do you kind of go about that?
So, yeah, I think each program is very different. So let's say I think we're ranked 4 in college right now. So let's say in the top 10 teams, I'm 100% sure they have 10 different recruiting processes. So every team is very different in the way they approach it. For us, really, I would break it into 2 parts. We have American recruiting, what we call domestic recruiting, which is a slightly longer process. And then we have international recruiting. Obviously, with domestic recruiting, you see players over a longer period of time. With international recruiting, coaches at my level, we're going to be at a lot of the larger events in the summer. So European Summer Championships, a lot of the ITFs spread throughout the summer. Certainly as well, if I spend, let's say, 2 weeks in Europe in the summer, I may be in an event on Monday and Tuesday, but if I have a recruiting contact or a meeting set up, then I will fly. It's not unusual for me to, let's say, fly into London, go to Madrid for 2 days for an event, hop on a plane and go to wherever I need to be, wherever in Europe for a day, 2 back, and then go on to the next event. So realistically, much of the international recruiting takes place in the summer or somewhat during the fall if it's very specific. But it really gets broken up into 2 parts because American recruiting is very, very different from international recruiting and the process that things go through.
Right. No, it's totally understandable. So what are kind of those top what's the top things you're looking for in a player, obviously physically and mentally, to be a part of your program generally, and then specifically y'all's team?
Specifically to us, it's the way we ask people to play. We have a very defined system. We ask players to play quite aggressive percentage tennis. So we have to recruit players who have those instincts and that background. It would be unfair. There's no right or wrong way to play tennis. If somebody is comfortable 6 feet behind the baseline, playing with a lot of shape, and they have a lot of success doing that, there's no right or wrong. But if I then recruit that player and ask them to press and go forward all the time, that's not fair to the player, and it's no good to me, right? You want to recruit players who fit within a system that you're trying to teach, not exclusively, but generally, right? Because sometimes we have a saying here, like square peg, round hole. You can't just make someone the way you want to make them, right? And you could take one player, you put them in, let's say our program, we're ranked 4 and they do terribly. You put them in the program who's ranked 14 and they do excellent. So what you try and learn with experience is the type of players that fit your system. There's no right or wrong way to do this, but there definitely is styles of coaching, styles of player, and you trying to find that. I think generally, you asked the question, how do we go about recruiting? They have to be at a level where they can be successful. Because the worst thing in the world is to bring somebody in, they can't play at this level, and then you're forced into difficult conversations. Do you not play for 4 years? Do you not play for 2 years and then try and find a better fit school? So level, I mean, at the end of the day, we can talk about style, and I like to see players hit the ball a certain way, but they have to be at a level they can be successful.
Right. And that kind of makes me jump into my next question. You've coached at the Division II level, you've played the Division II level, but now you're at a Power 5 conference Division I team. Could you walk through what you think about each of the divisions in college tennis? Because each one is very different. And I think there's a lot of opportunities. There's endless amounts of opportunities for kids to play college tennis. It just kind of depends which one, especially with the eligibility, aspect of things.
Yeah, so this is, I think, the hardest thing as a European is understanding the difference between the schools. I think if you ask an American what's the difference between the Premier League and the Serie A, they couldn't really necessarily tell you. And it's a lot of it is similar over here. So I have in my notes, in women's tennis in America, there are over 1,100 programs, and they're all very different. So we have different levels and different layers. So what most people think of as college tennis is what I do right now is what's called Division I, these large schools. So I have 37,000 students walking around on our campus. We're the biggest school in one of the largest states in America. That is what is known as Division I. And they have a set of rules. There's about just over 300 women's programs. There's about 250 men's. There's a few less men's, and we'll explain why later. But that is kind of what you would describe as, I think, what most people looking into America would describe as college tennis. It's the large schools with big athletic budgets. Within Division I, you have what's called the Power 5. It's basically 5 regional leagues that have about 11, 12 programs in them each. There's about 65 schools that have these large football programs, American football programs, that generate enormous amounts of money. So, our operating budget as a school athletic department is over $100 million a year. There are schools operating at over $200 million a year for anywhere between 16 and 25 sports. So those are kind of the big marquee, what's called Power 5 schools. Basically, there's 5 leagues that have a different level of money. And obviously with money comes facilities, support, travel, budgets, all these things. The next layer of Division I is what's called a mid-major. So schools that don't necessarily have the big TV contracts, but they can still be very, very high. They still are playing in the same league as us, but they don't necessarily have the resources we have. In tennis specifically, there are some very, very good mid-majors, because if they're in a location that's got a little bit of tennis to it, out in California, Florida, places like this, they can be very, very high level in tennis. Just because they're not necessarily have the resources, it makes it very hard for them to compete in the bigger sports. But in a smaller sport like tennis, the mid-majors can be very, very high level. And then you have kind of the regional schools, some smaller Division I schools that are also, they all play under the same rules, but they just don't quite have what the Power 5s have. Power 5 school, to give you a perspective in Europe, is a lot like walking around an Olympic Village. You have these enormous facilities, lots of money, lots of marketing, TV cameras, things like this, and the resources are growing and growing and growing and growing. The next layer down is Division II. So I played in Division II. They have a slightly different set of rules. Generally, the schools are going to be smaller public schools. So we would consider a large public school like NC State, 35,000 to 50,000 students. Generally in Division II, and this is not absolute, you're going to see schools 10,000 students, 15,000 students in more kind of regional areas of the country. And the difference really is budget. You know, the school I was at was one of the better Division II schools in tennis. Our operating budget as a department was about $4 million a year. So you compare that to where I'm at right now, and we're operating at 100 plus million a year. It's a very big difference in resources and facilities. The rules are slightly different for Europeans, and maybe Tina, you could tell me about this. When I was coaching in Division II, Norwegian players graduated at 19. Is that correct? I don't know if you still have that. Do you have 13 years of school?
Yep.
So for example, in Division I, you can, once you graduate high school, you have 6 months where you can do whatever you want in terms of playing tennis, traveling, whatever it is you want to do. But after that 6-month period, you cannot compete anymore. If you compete after your 6 months of graduation from high school, you will be penalized. Either you have to sit out or you'll miss matches, and it causes problems. This is what happened to me. Also, there is a rule that you have to be in college before you turn 20 in Division I. So for a Norwegian player, they have to know when you graduate a year late. Germany used to have this. England, we didn't have this, but we had the school like you did. So each set of rules and has to be known. The hard thing is no one's telling you necessarily the rules in Norway for American schools, right? And this is where, you know, what UTR is doing, trying to help people with information helps. So for example, me, I graduated a semester early in England. I went to Spain. I played tournaments. I thought I had a year to play. The year started earlier than I thought. I played in a main draw after that date, I was penalized. That was it. So for example, in Division II, the rule is different. The rule says, as long as you're not making more than expenses, you can enroll whenever you like. So you will have no penalty. So Division II, each division has different rules. Division III is another level down. And don't think of it that a Division I school automatically beats a Division II school. It's not relegation and promotion like football. It's the schools are always in a certain division unless they apply and move. Division III, there is no scholarships given for athletics. These tend to be smaller, private, really high academic institutions. But there is no athletic scholarship or athletic money rewarded. You can be given money based on your academics, but they don't have the same scholarship structure. Whereas in Division I, Division II, we give you money because you play tennis. It's the money is based on your athletic ability, not your academic ability. There's two more divisions. One is called Naia. These tend to be smaller schools as well in regional areas. They have a very loose set of rules. They have a similar structure, but it's very open. They really don't restrict anybody based on, there's no penalties really for how you compete when you graduate, et cetera, et cetera. It's very, very wide open to play. And then there's also a level called junior college. These are 2-year schools that can gain you access to 4-year schools. So what we see sometimes with international players is an international player may have some issues with their academics. They wouldn't qualify to play at a Division I school. What they can do is go to a 2-year junior college, complete 2 years of school, gain eligibility, and then move to a 4-year school. So it's basically the junior colleges give people kind of a second pathway to get to a 4-year school. So if they don't meet the requirements early for the 4-year schools, like when they graduate high school, the junior college gives them a chance to gain those credits. And the thing is, you still graduate with the same degree at the end. So when you finish your degree, you still have whatever school you graduate, that's what you have. So junior colleges are a really good pathway sometimes if people have complications with their academics or their tennis.
That's great. You really broke it down really well, and I don't have anything to add to that. And then kind of to jump into, I feel like this is probably the most difficult and biggest question today is, due to the pandemic, a lot of countries' borders are closed. There's no tournaments. Norway hasn't had tournaments since October, right, Tina? So it's been a long time. What can these players do, in terms of recruiting, because it is important to them if they want to play college tennis? How do they kind of get on your radar, or what should they be doing in the meantime while we don't have any tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, so it is tough. I think the biggest thing to know is we know it's tough. So, for example, this fall, from August to December here, we were not allowed to play tournaments either. And the effect it had on us coming into the spring was incredible. So basically, some schools were allowed to play based on where they were in the country. Some schools were not. The schools that didn't get to play, the first 2 months was incredibly tough. It's kind of evening out now after like 4 or 5 months. We understand it is very tough. The biggest thing to do is be proactive in other areas. The hardest thing in recruiting from a coach's standpoint is communication, because players, I had this all this week with different players. Coach, I'm busy. I'm busy too. We're all busy, but with COVID, you can't be that busy. So communicate and be a little bit creative, right? Like, everybody has a good video camera in their pocket now. You can film, you can play, you can't play tournaments, but if you can practice, you can get information to coaches. If a player is a certain level going into COVID, okay, and they don't get to play for 6 months, they're going to be a certain level coming out. We have a player coming here next year who is top 10 ITF. She has not been able to play for 6 months. I'm still confident she's going to be a good tennis player coming out. So I don't think you need to be too concerned that your UTR or your ranking is going to drop a huge amount, but you could put extra time into, making a video of how you practice, being a very good communicator about what your goals is, what your timeline is, and what your plan is when COVID ends. So, I think I used to buy the excuse that people were busy. If they were playing all the time, they didn't want to deal with college coaches. Sometimes we can be a little bit, not irritating, but you need some time, right? But I think the biggest things for players is to be creative and really put the time in to communicate. Because right now, I think players do have time. I think people gained a lot of time during this period. We had to change the way we recruited. We had to get creative as well. I mean, I'd never heard of Zoom a year ago. Now Zoom is my favorite way to recruit. I have presentations, I have videos, I have PowerPoints. It's actually been a huge positive for us. Some of our best recruiting, to be honest, has been on Zoom. So you have to adapt. There's so many different ways to get your information across without playing a tournament. Of course, when you start playing tournaments, it helps, but there are many other ways to do it now.
Right. So to kind of sum that up, be creative, be as communicative as possible. So that's great. The next question I had for you, is it true that the lower UTR players, are there scholarship opportunities for those players in the US?
There's 1,100 women's programs. 1,100 women's programs. I think people get very narrow focused on schools like ourselves. If you just look at the top 10, when they have 8 scholarships each, that's only 80 scholarships. But if you take 1,100 programs and you do the math out, there are an incredible amount of programs in very good situations. I think what happens with recruits is they get way too narrow focused on 1 or 2 schools. And the reality is as a European, America is an enormous country. You don't know America that well. I lived in California for 5 years. Mike, who's on this call, we were just talking. We were very close friends with the same person. People in California don't know half the schools on the East Coast. They don't know anything about them. So Europeans, this is a good time right now to educate yourself. There are a lot of schools. And there are a lot of schools that you've never heard of that are in fantastic places with good coaches, and you can have a great 4-year experience. No, it's too much of the attention goes to the schools at the very top. And the reality is the schools at the very top generally are filled with American players, because the Americans are kind of, they do their recruiting a little bit earlier. But there are so many good I could think 3 or 4 in my state I doubt many people on this call would ever have heard of, where I would send my children, because I know they're fantastic schools. And it's really about just learning how much of them are out there.
Absolutely. And I mean, even me as a college representative at UTR, I'm still learning about schools that are in awesome areas with great coaching staffs that I never heard of, and I've been doing this for a while. So has you. So I think the next kind of question we had was, do you think it's easier for girls to get scholarships than boys? Obviously, there are more programs. How do people navigate that?
Yeah, the easy answer is yes. We had a federal law come in America in the early 80s called Title IX, which basically said that men's and women's spending, any school that receives government money, which is every single school in America, must spend an equal amount of money on men's and women's sports, to be fair. Because the truth is, women did not get a fair deal in sports for 100 years. And it had to be fixed because it was wrong. And basically at our level, if you think about it, our football program has 85 full scholarships. There's no women's football. So you have to balance those 85 full scholarships across the women's side. So what does that look like? For women's tennis at our level, we have 8 full scholarships. Men's tennis has 4.5. That's how it balances out. In Division 2, it's 6 to 4.5. Division 3, there's no actual athletic scholarship, so it doesn't count. But yes, there is more money on the women's side for sure, and it's to do with the balance. The athletic department has to balance the budget for all sports, men and women, and football throws the balance so far off that so sports like women's tennis really benefit from that. But it's more of a conversation on the men's side. You have to understand that 4.5 scholarships does not divide by 6 players. So people are not everybody is going to take 100% scholarship. People have to, and that's something people have to manage, is that there has to be a budget more on the men's side. Generally on the women's side, it's really a conversation of, are you getting a scholarship or not? I can't give someone, for example, half a scholarship. I can give you a full scholarship. I can give you 0. And there are players who take 0. They're called walk-ons, non-scholarship athletes, and they're a part of the team, a huge part of this program as well. But the simple answer is yes. And even as a male, I feel very strongly that the world needed balance. And the amount of money that the deal that women got in sports before was so bad that this is a good correction.
Right, absolutely. And to kind of segment that into just a question I thought after, having this conversation is, are there more opportunities for international players other than athletic scholarships? Because I personally don't know that answer. For American players, I went through it, there's a lot of academic money that I could find, but for international players, does your school, or do you know of any schools that have international waivers? Because I know our school, Georgia College, had an international waiver. Yep. Is that a universal thing? Because I don't know the answer to that.
It's specific to the state. So you went to school in the same state I went to. In the state of Georgia, if an international, let's say someone from Norway comes in and they maintain a certain level of academics, they then would qualify to pay what's called in-state tuition. So the way it works in America in public schools, I live in North Carolina, I pay taxes. If my son goes to a state school here, the school costs a lot less than someone from California to come to school here, because at the end of the day, my tax money pays for the state school. Some states have rules where someone from Norway could come and they pay at the same rate as someone from North Carolina. So each state has different rules on that. And that's very specific to public schools. But yes, absolutely, internationals can receive international academic money. Yes.
And that's definitely an important question. You would tell the junior players to make sure that they are asking those coaches, especially on the men's side, since there are only the 4.5 scholarships. That's great. And then to kind of shift gears a little bit, I'm sure you've had players transfer. We talked about the JUCO things, so that kind of goes into that as well. Is it okay to transfer from a college if you're not happy? And then how would a player, go about doing this if they're midway in their career, or even if it's their freshman year and they decide, okay, I need to find a different option that I like better? Because you're right, the US is massive. We have so many different locations, so many different, culture segments that they can be a part of and change, and you got to find the right fit. So kind of go into the transfer process. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Transferring is a part of sports. The truth is I've never coached a year in college where I haven't had a player transfer. And I've been on some pretty good programs. It's not about right or wrong. It's about fit. So we have 8 scholarships. Realistically, we play 6 players, maybe 7 with a rotation in doubles. I've never seen a number 8 player be that happy. Because if you're practicing all this time you put into your junior career and you don't play, it's very tough. I think it's one of the hardest things to do is to be a player who's number 8 and keep working very, very hard, staying super focused. It's not easy. It's really, really hard. And transferring gives players the option to find better fits. You would hope most players transfer for good reasons. Of course, there are problems. Every program deals with different problems, and sometimes players have to transfer for not good reasons. But it is a reality of the sport that transferring happens. We have 2 players who transferred to us on our team. They were not happy in their situation. They looked to transfer out. The rules changed a couple of years ago. It's a lot simpler now. Basically, let's say a girl on my team is not happy with the way I'm coaching her, and she feels she could be a better player at another program. She would go to our rules people. They're called compliance. She would put in a request to enter what's called the transfer portal. It's basically a website where the player puts in their name, they enter their name and their information, and all the other coaches in the US can now see that she is looking to transfer and can contact her. So she basically becomes a free agent. Now, the positives and negatives of that is obviously people can contact her and help her to transfer. The negative of that is once my player does that, I don't have to give them a scholarship next year anymore. I don't have to guarantee anything for them. So that scholarship becomes mine again to go and find another player. So transferring has become much, much simpler. It happens a lot. Part of it is the nature of our sport, because especially on the women's side, but 2 reasons really. The women's side, because we have a lot more scholarships than we need starters. People who are not playing generally want to go somewhere they can play. On the men's side, a lot of it can be to do with money, right? If you're not on a full scholarship, or you're struggling financially and you could go to another school and get more money, transferring is a good option. It's tough because it's not something people really want to talk about. It's not embarrassing, but it's obviously not a positive thing to have players transfer in and out, but it is a reality. Yes, you are not, if you go somewhere and it's not what you thought it would be, or something happens, you do have the freedom to move. Yes. And I think that ultimately is a positive, but it's obviously not a fun experience. Transferring can be stressful. But yeah, there's a big process in place for it.
Right. No, I transferred myself, and it was a pretty easy process. I think sometimes it's a taboo subject, but I mean, again, I can't emphasize how many different schools there are in this country, and how many different opportunities, how many different college coaching styles, figuring out who you mesh well with. And especially if you have different academic interests after your first year, or different tennis interests, if you figure out, okay, wow, I actually do really want to play at a higher level, maybe you transfer to an even better school, which is seen a lot. But I'm on my final question, and that is, how are you using UTR in the recruiting process that you use?
Yeah, so UTR, I joke I've spent a lot of years working with UTR. I joke that they annoy me because they made it a lot easier for college coaches who didn't know international players, which was annoying because, 15 years ago, before UTR, recruiting international was about knowledge of international players. And obviously I'm European. It's easy. I've been pretty much everywhere in Europe. I feel comfortable moving around and recruiting in Europe. Excuse me. What UTR has done is obviously created a window into the results and getting to know players. It really is the first base. I get probably 40 emails a day from recruits. The first thing I'm going to do is click, and speaking to younger players, if you're emailing a coach, just put your UTR link in the email. The first thing I'm going to do is click the link and get an idea of the level. Because if I've never seen you play or I don't know you, I have to start with level. Does the level meet the basic requirement? And then is it worth more conversation and more information? But UTR in this country has become really the starting point that every conversation starts with, especially for internationals. Because if you don't know that person, that coach, club, it's really the first place you start.
Right. All right. Well, I think we've got a ton of information for these junior players. Tina, Mike, do we want to open up the floor to some questions?
I think
Tina,
so.
Tina, you wanna lead that?
Yeah, I can. I think we just need to, Andres, be aware if anyone wants to ask questions, to unmute them. I'm not sure because a lot of questions were answered here, so this was a good session for what I think are the other main questions from our players. But I'm asking the juniors listening if they have anything to add. Do we have like a way to signalize?
They can write it in the chat if they'd like, too, as well.
They can also write in the chat if they
Yeah,
have
that would
questions.
be one option to do it. So all you have to do is click next to the video icon. You'll see some dots, and then just click on it and put it in chat, and you can put in any question you have, if there are any. I mean, David did an exceptional job, and thanks to all of you for prepping us with the questions as well beforehand. That really helps for the content for sure.
I can just start with one question I have after David talked, because he said that he spends a lot of his summers watching players in tournaments, in the summer cups and all of these big tournaments in Europe. But what do you do when you can't travel? Because obviously in the United States, you're not allowed to leave the country as much. I don't know how it was last year, but maybe you're all getting vaccinated, so maybe you can travel this summer. But how do you go about when you can't travel at all?
So we got a recruiting ban March 15th. The recruiting ban lifts on June 1st. So the people like my rivals and competitors, we will be moving on June 1st. So most of us are fully vaccinated. I was fully vaccinated in March. Basically, we're going to go wherever we're allowed to go. If there's events, we will find you. And at our level, with the money that's involved, we can move around very freely. But without it, it's like I said, I watch a lot of matches where people put on YouTube links of events. I'm working with Ben on events coming up in the fall, and really what we've been doing is a lot of places have been upgrading technology and just providing video links of matches. I've been watching a ton. I could probably watch 5 matches a day online, and people sending me that. So we've really just been watching virtually and doing the best we can, but nothing beats seeing a match. And actually more so than when we go to these events to see match, it's more to put a face to a name. So I'll know the name, I'll know the results. I want to see the face, the size, how they swing. But realistically, once recruiting actually starts to go past that, I really want to go to the club and see the coach and see what they're doing, and see, you know, talk to the parents and see, give them more of an honest go of what we would do and how we would approach this and things like that. But from our point of view, the NCAA, which is the governing body, have said that we are free to do whatever recruiting we want starting June 1st. Now, that's going to be different for every program. So the bigger schools, obviously with more money, we weren't hit quite as hard as some of the smaller schools. So of course, it's the rich get richer, right? We'll be free to start moving again, whereas some of the smaller schools, they might not be able to do anything right now. Yeah, we will. It's been a lot of video work. I've watched, I would say I watched 10 to 20 matches a week on YouTube links, on play sites, on different services, and players have been really good about doing that.
Yeah, I guess that's a great answer. And for David, we've gotten just a couple more in the chat, and some of them I think he reviewed. But Caroline asked, "Hey, what do you mean by programs when you talk about programs?" Yeah, so we are the NC State Women's Tennis Program. So you could swap that with teams. You could say my team. We generally the language we use here is the program, because it encompasses more than just the tennis team. It's the program, it's the strength and conditioning, it's the all-encompassing. But when someone says my program, really what we're saying is my team. Okay, great. Then the next one is which you spoke about a little bit, but this is it's all how you say this in the language. But is it easier to get a scholarship for girls than
I wouldn't say it's easier. I would say there's more opportunities. Yes. Yeah, that's probably the best way to say. And then do you have a tip on how to get in touch with a suitable college? Yeah, so when I worked, Mike and I, unbeknownst, used to be neighbors. When I worked at a large club in California, we started using a tool called UTR Fit. I hope I'm using the right name, but that's what I call it. And a very easy way to understand basic level. You go in on your UTR profile, take your UTR, go to the college section, select male or female, put your UTR in, and it's going to produce a list of you of teams where their top 6 players are within that range. And Tina, if you want, we can put it up on the screen right now. I know you've done an amazing job with the communication already with the Federation, but if you want, it's up to you. We can put it up on the screen and show people.
Yeah, perfect. Maybe Andres or something who has the share screen. I don't know.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. Because that's one of the hardest ways to figure out level is, and this is really what we're talking about with UTR. Now we have a way of comparing between groups, right? It's like, how do you compare an American player to a Norwegian player to an Australian player? You go to the college section, take your UTR, and it will populate a huge list for you. And then you can start to work down on the list. Yeah, and Andres can show you, I mean, he's just putting in a UTR right now. And if for someone wants to play top 6, you can pick your gender, the conference that you want, even if you do know it. If you don't, it's okay. And even a location if you want. So this is really, I mean, Ben really can speak more to this, but this college fit tool it's a game changer. I mean, Ben, you can comment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I use this through my recruiting process. I still go on here. I've got friends who are in the transfer process right now, so I always tell them to use this to kind of check out. And especially if you want to be kind of that big fish in a small pond, you know, if you want to be top 2 or 3 in the lineup coming in, and you definitely want to guarantee, if you're a male player and you want to guarantee that you're going to get a solid scholarship, then maybe this is something to absolutely look at as well, and put in top, because you can put in what line, top 3 or top 1, top 2, all the way down to 6. So that's how I recommend using it as well. And then obviously, you know, all the states are different in America. So, you know, kind of doing your background research on the different states, or if you've been to one before, doing it by location is a good way as well. And then, if you need that athletic scholarship for sure, then, make sure you're picking everything other than Division III. But again, there are plenty of academic opportunities as well.
That's great. And then next question is it possible to start without a scholarship, David, and then potentially earn one at a later date?
For sure. The reality is most schools, teams have players who do not receive scholarship. I've coached in college, age myself here, 15 years maybe. I think I've only filled all my scholarships 3 out of 15 years. It's usually a spot open. So if in the past, if we had a walk-on and we didn't fill, we would just give them a scholarship. So absolutely. Some schools have a policy where they basically tell you the first year you come, we have nothing. If you make the lineup, you will earn a scholarship. So every school, and that's where you have to talk to the coach to see what their thing is. But absolutely, the reality is if you don't get a scholarship the first year, but you contribute, you're in the lineup playing singles, doubles, there's absolutely no reason you wouldn't earn a scholarship moving forward. Yeah.
Okay, great. Next one is, do you have any players, or have you heard over your career and working in collegiate tennis, of a player that's able to combine, let's say, a partial tennis scholarship and then also get a partial academic scholarship as well? Can you combine those? Is that a potential?
You can, absolutely. You cannot go over 100%. That's where schools get in trouble. But let's say, for example, you get 30% athletic money from the coach, but you qualify for 50% academic money, you have an 80% scholarship. Yeah, money is money. You just can't go over anything. So for example, it would be, you could imagine what would happen if I said to my girls, hey, I can give you a full athletic scholarship, and if you make good grades, I'll give you even more money. There would start to be ethical problems where it's like, well, we can just give you a lot more money, So no, you absolutely can combine, especially on the men's side. That's important when you're talking about only having 4.5 scholarships. You don't see it much on the women's side unless you're talking about maybe some slightly smaller schools and more of the regional schools where maybe they can't give all the money. But no, players are allowed to get money wherever they qualify for, as long as everything is done the right way.
Yeah, Mike, to touch on that was my progression in college tennis. Was I had mostly an academic scholarship and then only a partial athletic scholarship, and then paid a small percentage each semester. And my whole team was like that. My first school was not a strong academic school, so a lot of the stronger students got the academic money. And I think a lot of college coaches leverage that to their advantage as well.
Yeah, congratulations on that. That's a great accomplishment.
I wasn't that smart, so
yeah, I wasn't either. But so next one may be for Ben too as well, or David, whoever wants to take it. But what are the typical UTRs, do you think, in the different divisions if you go D1, 2, and Division 1, 2, and 3? If you think.
I can tell you mine, Ben, and then if you want to work down. So I think our team UTR, the 6th score is like a 64. So that means basically my girls are averaging just below an 11. Pretty much. I would say at the higher level, every top 16 schools, it's not unusual that they have 6 or 7 top 100 ITF kids on one team. That's about the level up here. And then obviously it filters down.
Yeah, I think that's a really tough question to answer, because in Division 1, even one of the worst Division 1 schools, a top Division 2 school might have way higher UTRs. Because for an example, a number 1 Division 2 women's school, or they're around number 1 Berry College in Florida, their number 1 girl is around a 9.6, 9.7. But then, if you go down on their roster, it gets down into the 8s. And then on a lower Division 2 team, you can have anything from 4 to 7. Like it is such a wide range. and there are so many opportunities to play college tennis. I don't think you can ever restrict yourself at a certain UTR level. It's just going to restrict, obviously, the level of the school and the level of the scholarship. But even the scholarships, there's potential at even the lowest level.
Okay, great. And then this one may be for more for David, but is there a ranking list or central directory of all the schools in the different divisions? I know, of course, like on our site, we have UTRs, and you can activate your player profile. All that is free, and you can activate your player profile for free too as well, which gives you more information on yourself too as well. And then if you want to upgrade to Power subscription, which is a yearly subscription where it's the only thing you'd have to pay for on the site, you can see everybody's rating plus the 2 decimal points. But is there a central directory at all for the schools and different divisions?
Intercollegiate Tennis Association, ITA. ITAtennis.com has team, singles, and doubles rankings for every division. They're the kind of the central governing group for college tennis, and they rank. So tennis is a spring sport. We play from January. The team matches from January to late May, and they run team rankings every week from the end of January through May. Individual and doubles rankings is actually all year. But yes, the ITAtennis.com.
That's great. Then we'll, I think we have the final 3 questions here before we wrap it up. Is I think you addressed this a little bit already, but about recruiting, is it going to be harder because of the extra year due to COVID, which I think it's a challenge for everybody. But yeah, if you have anything else to add.
I think the 2021 year is the hardest recruiting group there's ever been. I think they're the ones who've been hurt the most by this, because I don't think the 20 people graduating 2022, they're not really that affected because there's time. The 2021s are the hardest hit by far, because you have the limits to recruiting. People can't travel, people can't see play. In Norway, you can't compete. But also you have so I have players here. My players are supposed to play for me for 4 years. I have players here who are playing their 5th year because they were given another year. And that took scholarships from the next group. Not directly, but basically we had to choose. Do we keep our players or do we take a new player? Well, most coaches, I took my players. So the 2021 group, it's been very, very hard for them. Very, very hard. I don't think 2022 is going to be that affected personally, because there's time. But the 2021 group, absolutely, it's been very, very hard for them.
That's a great point, David. And then also for the divisions, are partial scholarships to your knowledge available for all three divisions?
Yes. So the rule in Division 1 and 2 is, on the women's side, it has to be 100 or 0 if the program can fully fund. So what that means is, let's say in Division 1, we're allowed to give 8. If we have the money for 8, we can give 100% or 0. Let's say I'm a smaller school and I only have money for 7 people. I'm allowed to break up the money a little bit. But on the men's, partials is normal. You can count on one hand, I think, men's players who have full scholarships. We have a boy on our men's team here who's 280 ATP and he doesn't have a full scholarship. So that is normal in men's tennis, yes, to have a partial scholarship.
And then I think I can actually answer the final question, saying how important are ITFs now that UTR is so widely used. I would say that all match competition is important for your development, or if you just want to get a college scholarship. But in general, I would play matches. With UTR, the key is you can play level-based matches because the rating is so accurate, and it really helps with that. But we get all the results from all the ITF tournaments, which contribute to your UTR. So any of the major events and any federation events too as well, we get the data, and that helps your UTR. So match play is the best for player development, and also your opportunity to go to, obviously, earn a college scholarship and become a student athlete in the United States.
I would just add to that and say as well, ITF does not stream matches. one thing we've learned recently with the UTR tournaments is they're streaming the matches, the video. I can watch the matches without being there. So, you know, if you're at a certain level, we will find you. That's a given. And the more opportunities you have to play, the more opportunities that we will find you. And I would just encourage you to play competitively once you can. I understand it's tough right now, but that's kind of the point. For sure, a few years ago, it became very exclusive, the amount of money that was being spent to travel and play this ITF circuit. But the whole point with UTR is to bring it back to where you don't have to spend a fortune to play. If you are a good player, just play.
Yeah, so I think, but David, for those of you that don't know, this past year, Universal Tennis started a UTR professional tennis tour. So we committed to running 150 tournaments around the globe per year. And it is actually, like David said exactly, all the matches are streamed live. And it's a format that is amazing. You can play locally or travel a short distance, and you're guaranteed at least a minimum of 4 matches and also prize money as well. So it is the most innovative format for those competitive players, and gives them amazing, you know, match play that's super popular. And streaming live from a recruiting standpoint as a college coach, it's amazing. You can just watch it on YouTube and actually be able to recruit and watch players from all around the world. We're running events in Australia, in Europe, a ton in the United States, and then we'll be branching off to Asia too as well. So if you do qualify for those, you can go to our site and see the list of all the events. If you want to stay in Europe, you can. We have a whole European tour going on, and you're more than welcome to apply, you know, to participate in those as well. So great. Well, just wanted to wrap up and just thank David and Ben for today. I mean, David, outstanding job, and I mean the information it's invaluable. I mean, even for someone like me to hear it from you is extremely beneficial, and we really appreciate all your support and everything you're doing. And we wish you the best of luck, you know, with the team in the season, even with all the circumstances and everything. I think it's pretty amazing what you're doing, and then to Ben too, of course, thanks so much. I mean, everything you're doing with the company and helping players and helping teams as well is amazing. So, and then finally, just like to thank the Norwegian Tennis Federation and Tina and Svein. Thank you so much. And then Tina, I'll just turn it over to you to close.
Yeah, well, like you, Mike, thank you so much, you guys, for informing our juniors about all of this. And I think I can talk for all the juniors here and the parents that this was really, really helpful. And we know now what to do. We see also that we can in the end of May and start of June, we're opening up for, hopefully, if the government says so, that we can play tournaments. And we will play UTR level-based tournaments locally and get some matches registered, so that you guys, the college coaches, will find that yeah, we have some Norwegian players too. So thank you so much for your time today, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Have a good night.
Yep. Thank you for having us, and get some sleep. Yeah. Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Thank you.